20th.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we're recording.
All right. Welcome everyone to the Sacramento Storytellers Guild's December 20th program. First, a little housekeeping. Turn your phones off or to an airplane mode. Or what's the other one? Mine has just got a little silence button, but that's number one because we don't want to interrupt our tellers. Number two, the bathrooms. Out this door directly to your left. Go in the other door, go down the hall, and then go left. And that's where the bathrooms are. And you're in for a wonderful program today. You're going to have 6 tellers and 2 poets. And we are so lucky that our host this afternoon is a one. I know who it is. I'm building up attention. This wonderful host. He is a wonderful storyteller, and he comes all the way down the mountain every chance he gets to tell a story. And he has been very helpful in the past with our festival, so I'm counting on him. And so I want to have everyone give him a warm welcome. Our host for today is Eric Hurt.
Hello, everyone, and a pretty Merry Christmas to you all. Thank you all for coming out today. So, food. Tonight, Dave, I love our stories and content's going to talk.
I mean, the microphone closer to your mouth.
There we go. So, is that right? So food is our theme. And I've asked each individual about something that they remember fondly about food. And just for myself, just to begin, my grandmother used to make these wonderful little chocolates dipped in chocolate truffles, and just as a child, it was always a great treat. So you'll find as I go around introducing each one, I'm going to keep some will be longer, some will be shorter for introductions. But just to begin, our first teller will be Ed Lewis, and just Ed's going to be sharing with us a story. Well, first of all, for food for Ed, it seems to be very popular these days, but cranberry relish. I don't know if anyone's here has had that, but that's one of his quite favorites during the holidays. Ed is going to share with you a story that he worked on back in 1996 with he did a workshop with professional storyteller David Novak. And this story sat on the shelf for many years. He just brushed it off, breathed some life into it, and he's going to share it today. Here's Ed.
All right, so this is a cautionary tale that will give you messages about the importance of listening to your parents and following everything they say and do, as well as never talk to strangers. Just a minute. Well, here I sit, alone again, in a cold cabin out in the woods. You would think my daughter would come out here and visit me, but no, she's in her condominium and looking at that thing, the phone deal, and she's supposed to do 15,000 steps. You would think she would come out in the woods to visit her dear mother. But at least her granddaughter comes and visits. She's got the weirdest name you can ever imagine. In my day, we named children sensible names like Mary and Evelyn. And these hippie children of ours name their children Daisy, Blossom, Sky River, and my daughter named her daughter Little Riding Hood. And you would think at least the lumberjack would come and bring me some wood out here in the forest. But no. I am a lumberjack, straight and tall. I chop down trees to watch them fall. Chop, chop, timber. Timber, timber, timber. A lot of trees to cut down. I do want to get to Granny's house later. La 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 la. I'm going to Granny's house. I've got some tofu cookies. I've got some tofu sandwich. I'm going to Granny's house. La 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 la. But it's dark in this forest, and can I take that path or that path? Hello, little girl. Do you know who I am? Oh, yes, you're that scary big bad wolf. I'm not really so. I'm going to my granny's house. Where does she live? 1220 Redwood Lane. Thank you. Take the path to the left. Wolf heads on down to the shortcut, and he gets to Granny's house. And he just walks in the door. Okay, I know my part in the story. You're the big bad wolf, but things are going to change. I'm going into the closet. I'm not going to let you eat me up. Give me a minute. Granny is in the closet, and the big bad wolf comes in and lays down on the bed. La 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 la. I'm going to Granny's house. I've got some tofu, lots and lots of tofu. She comes into the house and looks at the big bad wolf in the bed, who she thinks is Granny. My, what big eyes you have. The better to see you with. My, what big ears you have. The better to hear you with. My, what big teeth you have. The better to eat you with. La 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 la. Did I hear a scream? Did I hear a scream? Chop. Oh yeah, timber. The lumberjack rushes over to the house, crashes in the door, has his axe ready to chop that wolf in half, and Granny comes out of that closet. Listen here, young feller. You weren't going to chop up any wolf and put that wolf blood and guts on my floor. In fact, you're kind of a good-looking guy. I'll tell you what. Why don't you join me? And we'll go on a little cruise together. I've been saving lots of money. And so, Granny and the lumberjack head off to the Bahamas and get in cruise ships. And for the next 10 years, they cruise all around the world. Little Red Riding Hood opens up. Fabulous tofu vegetarian restaurant in San Francisco. And you ought to go check it out sometime. And as for the big wolf, big bad wolf, he is currently our president.
Well done, well done.
Very much. I don't say about little bit of thinking. All right, for our, thank you, Ed, again. Our next storyteller is someone I've never had the privilege to hear before. I'm really, her name is Dr. Megan Batt, and she's actually, she, for food, she enjoys, like during the Christmas season, she enjoys kind of coconut curry type dishes, which I find is kind of unique and sounds wonderful there. She's an award-winning storyteller. She has actually just recently, well, let me just begin by telling you that she's a first-generation Asian immigrant. She's a founder of, I can't read my own writing, forgive me. Well, one thing that really impressed me was just for 2025, the National Storytelling Network, they awarded her with the Oracle Award for regional leadership and service. And that's quite so actually, welcome her right now.
Yay!
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone.
Hello there.
Uh, so I am 9 years old and I'm sitting at the small dining room table, basically, in our kitchen in a one-bedroom apartment in Mumbai, India, where my parents, my paternal grandparents, my younger sister, and I lived. That was our childhood home. And at that kitchen table, I, a young girl, had a very important decision to make, a huge dilemma. There was an important question. It wasn't Hamlet's to be or not to be, but it was, should I go or should I stay back? And let me give you some context about this dramatic moment. You see, my paternal grandmom, lovingly called as Ai, had invited me, or actually requested me, to come along with her for one of her many medical test appointments. And as a young girl who used to get super bored going with our adults for their medical appointments, I would say no. And at that moment, she knows that I'm going to say no. I'm reluctant in those 2 seconds when she has told me, can you come with me later this afternoon? And while I'm about to say no, she reads my body language and she tells me, Meghna, if you come along with me on the way home, we will stop and eat chaat, which is a type of street food. And that was a magic word. My ears perked up and there was a spring in my step. There was a twinkle in my eye. I was salivating and my stomach started grumbling, even though I just had a good breakfast. And I was like, I reluctantly showed, like, okay, let's go, we'll go for your blood test appointment. And it was just a 15-minute walk. But from the time we left home until her appointment, and then she gave her, lab work and everything, all I kept thinking is what kind of chaat I would we eat and how much would I eat. Now, those who are not familiar, chaat is one of the many types of street food available in different parts of India. And it varies by name, it varies by taste, but it is a blend of savory, spicy, sweet, crispy, soft, crunchy flavors all in once. I cannot even justify the description. You have to try chaat to understand that. And you will find it in the most unhygienic spaces. So thanks to Mumbai, my stomach immunity is excellent right now. As soon as we go for that visit, one of the things I do want to let you know, and something you don't know, was that there were three things. One thing is my grandmom had diabetes type 2, and she would often get hypoglycemic. So every 3 to 6 months, she had to go walk 15 minutes to our local health clinic to get her A1C lab work done, right? Secondly, both my parents were working full time, And so I spent a lot of time with her, being the older daughter and the granddaughter. And my younger sister was still young, and my grandfather couldn't walk that long. So I was her only friend and company, and we would spend a lot of time alone. And honestly, the third thing, which now in hindsight, I realize it can be very isolating and lonely to go for those appointments by yourself. Well, that was not the first time, and that was not the last time I was bribed with chart. This ungrateful and I would say hard to get granddaughter realized it much later in her adult life. But that sparked that moment where I realized chart was such a big, important part of my uh, fabric, for my diet, for my lifestyle, for my identity. On the other hand, my dad, we grew up in a middle class working family, and my dad would do his best to really make sure that we enjoy the nice things in life. So once in a while, we would go to a restaurant and we would try like the seafood buffet. And we would be so excited. It would be like going to Disneyland, right? The excitement that kids have here, it was for us almost like once in 2 months or whenever it was. We would dress in our best of colorful clothes. And it was like as if the queen is coming, we would go for the seafood buffet. And we were used to trying fish and shrimp or prawns, because something you should know that we grew up, even though we grew up in Mumbai, my grandparents and ancestors are from a city called Mangalore in Karnataka. And that is across the coast of India, where we grew up with having seafood, coconut based dishes. But when we went to these seafood buffets, my dad, we would get very intimidated because people would be eating, dressed up well, and we were like, how are we going to eat? This is messy. Like, what are people going to think of us? Is this the first time you're coming here? And then my dad would be like, don't worry about everybody else. On that moment, he would slowly and patiently tell us, me and my sister, I'm going to encourage you to try whatever food you want. And if you don't like it, I will never ask you or remind you again. But I'm not going to force you, but I definitely invite you to try. And we were like, okay, fine. As long as they're not sad vegetables, we are okay trying. So there, my dad would actually and again, I've not had crab or lobster recently, but he would break the leg and like he would remove the meat and give it to us to try. And he would do it with so much of care and affection. And this was completely different persona from his regular working dad, busy dad every day. He would just slow things down for us. And thanks to him, my mom, my sister, and my palate opened up to so many flavors and spices, even until today. So while I enjoy homemade favorite dishes by my grandmom, and also the konkani dishes that are made in Mangalore, and my dad allowing, giving us that enjoyment of like trying seafood and coastal food, I loved that journey. But there was also one problem. As much as I enjoyed tasting them and being so excited, enjoying this whole buffet of things, I did not know how to cook. Tan tan. So, even at 23, when I left for the US on a one way ticket to pursue my graduate studies, my mom and I started getting a bit anxious. We were like, oh my God, you're going to be staying alone there with roommates. You don't know how to cook. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't know how to cook. Because in one way, my grandmom was very territorial about the kitchen. She rarely allowed my mom to cook. She rarely allowed us to learn cooking. For her whole life, that was her identity and her love language. And while I knew the process of how to cook rice and boil eggs, yay for eggs, any time of the day, I knew I had to learn something more. But it's interesting when you're thrown in on this boat with no oars, you just learn to survive. And so with my roommates, who none of us knew how to cook, we are different from different parts of India. We four girls are trying to experiment on each other with different kinds of food. And as we are busy with graduate studies, we don't realize how time flies. Of course, the days we don't have time for cooking, and with our budget, we would have cup noodles. You remember those days? Yeah. And but there were moments where I would get so excited. I would get like that. It's almost like the a bug bite, but of energy from my grandmom, where she used to cook so much for so many people. She used to always tell me, and my mom used to tell me, when you invite people home, they should look at the stock pot and never feel, oh my God, there is very less, but I'm really hungry and it's so delicious. So make enough that people can feel invited and welcome and comfortable, having seconds and thirds. And I know it varies by family, it varies by what we have, but that stood by me. And so one day for my roommates, I made dal, which is lentils. It exactly it tasted so delicious. I was surprised. And so we invited our mentors, our friends who had supported us through this international student journey as a thank you. I was like, I made rice, I made dal, we made the vegetables with my roommates. What I did not realize in the level of excitement, I think I had made enough dal for the city of Philadelphia. To the extent I think it kept multiplying in that stock pot. And by day 4, even though we had taken so many leftovers, my friends took, I took, to campus, it just kept multiplying. It did not get over. My friends still joke about that day. And until now, they'd be like, Meghna, it took us months to recover from the amount of dal you had made that day. Well, these are mini short stories, but one of the things that I do want to wrap up with is one of the things I realized being a researcher and a scholar who studies cinematic representations and popular culture studies is I found an invisibility of South Indian cuisines in the mainstream culinary landscape. So the dosas and the idlis and the rice and the coconut gravies that I got used to eating, I couldn't find it here, right? So I had to learn how to make many of these things if I wanted to replicate even an ounce of that excitement of finding my home, finding the sense of belonging. And as you know, I found things that, again, like haldi doodh, which is turmeric milk, and you pay like $10 for like a golden milk latte nowadays, is basically things that my grandmom used to give it to us when we had cold and cough. Right. And it's just milk and turmeric. Yeah. But it's one of those things that made me realize. So my husband and I, for the past few years, even in Chicago and Sacramento, started celebrating Diwali, the festival of lights. For us, it was not about religion. It was about bringing a sense of community, expressing our gratitude to our chosen families who have stood by us, and to educate them about the different South Indian delicacies we make. So the past 3 years, our group gatherings have increased. And we have had one 2 years ago. Last year was two different gatherings, and this year was three different gatherings. And because it's an apartment, and if it is one of those things where every time we invite our chosen family and we serve them something of our culture. For me, it was my grandmom's Konkani Mangalorean food, which is usually a curry blended with coconut, red chilies, roasted red chilies, and tamarind. Right? I'm sorry, I'm drooling. And at the same time, my husband Harish started cooking things that his late mom used to make for festivals. Overall, it was a sense of love language, a sense of community for immigrants away from home. And nowadays, when I go for my doctor appointments as the adult, really bored, really not interested or anxious, and I sit at the lobby feeling alone, feeling anxious, I remind myself of I and the chart and the amazing times we had through those encounters. Thank you.
Very good. There you go.
Thank you very much. In fact, if you'd ever like to invite us over for dinner sometime. You said.
Especially the dog.
Karen, you're going to be you're our next. So Karen, I just want to a little bit about an ex-teller. Um, when it comes to Christmas, desserts are on her. Christmas cookies are her favorite. And Karen's been doing storytelling for more years than I can count on my fingers here. But you're in for a treat. Here's Karen.
Well, my story is about Christmas cookies. And I think probably everyone has a favorite Christmas cookie. I think they must have been the first gifts that people, because they didn't have the money. Because I remember in my stocking, I used to get acorns or walnuts and an orange and maybe a cookie. So thinking that's probably they were the first Christmas presents. But cookies come in all shapes. You've seen very large cookies in some bakeries and small little tiny cookies, Christmas trees, gingerbread men, Santa Claus. And have you ever watched the Cooking Channel? Some of those cookies are pieces of art. I wouldn't want to take a bite in any one of them. They're too pretty. But my story goes back to when I first got to our first house and we got all settled in and we moved in November. And the week of Christmas, my daughter was probably about a year old and I was very pregnant with our second. And all of a sudden we were here at night, a little knock on the door, and my husband get up, he'd go to the door, and there was a little bag of just a couple of cookies. Next night, a little knock on the door, get up, another little bag. This went on for the whole week of Christmas before Christmas Day. We never saw the person. Now, how could I miss the person? We had a corner sink and the front door was right there. How come I never saw that person come up and knock on our door and leave those cookies? But we look forward to it. And do you know those cookies arrived every year for the 6 years we lived in that house? 7 years. So when we moved up into the country, we moved up to Bernie, California. And if none of you have ever been up there, if you have seen Bernie Falls, we lived else from the falls. And I fell in love and found out I was a country girl. And I wanted to have the kids learn to make cookies. It just so happens my daughter's favorite cookie was a sugar cookie. Everybody could make a sugar cookie, flour, water, and sugar and an egg. So I thought, we're going to start making Christmas cookies and we will leave them for our neighbors. That became a wonderful thing that we continued almost until they both were in high school. For some reason or another, it fell off. But that's what we would do. And every year, the kids would look for a new shape because we wanted to do a new shape. So one year it may be Christmas trees. The next year it may have been Santa Clauses. Each year had to be a different shape. And Christmas cookies, when the kids were little, those sprinkles, that was all. They were pleased that they could put the sprinkles on, and they were little. So they could sneak up under the windows and knock on the door and get away fast. So no one saw them. We left the cookies for all the neighbors. As they got older, it was a little harder to get in and out, but my son was very good at sneaking around. But we ran out and we had to start doing cookies. And so then we would decide we'd do a little instead of just doing sprinkles, maybe we decorate them with frosting. But you know, when you put frosted cookies in baggies, they kind of stick together. And we decided, nope, we had to go back to just the plain old sprinkles. And about 5 years into doing it, my neighbor, and my son could not tell a lie, she looked at Patrick and she said, Patrick, have you been bringing our Christmas cookies? And he'd go, she said, Patrick, you sure you have Christmas cookies? And he'd say, Mom did it. It was Mom's fault. But that was tradition that we had for many, many years. And I was hoping that I would be able to share that with my grandchildren. But little did I know, neither of my children wanted children. So I had no tradition to hand down to my family. But it's a wonderful tradition if you ever want to try to do it with your grandchildren. It's a time to get together with the kids and make cookies and just let them have fun. Just put all the sprinkles and stuff out and let them just have fun decorating the cookies. Let them choose who they want to give their little bags of Christmas cookies. Thank you.
Good. I love it.
Yeah.
I was just thinking if you were to get started on those cookies, and we all can't join you in the kitchen, but for January.
Joyce
that'd be a wonderful
brought the
treat.
Christmas cookies.
Oh, okay, all right, very good. I was curious, is Dwight here? Dwight Jackson?
Yes, I am.
Dwight, right, Dwight. Dwight is our poet, and he has he's got some wonderful poem or poems to be sharing with us. Dwight, please feel welcome to come right up. And that'd be Dwight.
Do you want to stand?
No, ma'am. Thank you
Okay.
very much. I was back there looking for my cookie poem. I didn't find it. Oh, 5 minutes.
10 minutes.
10 minutes? Oh, that means everything gets read. Perfect. All right. I just rushed over from playing chess. That's the thing I like to do when I'm not writing poems or making hats. So this first poem is called, any chess players out there? No, so you guys won't know what the hell I'm talking about. This is called Leper of the Game. I have fallen in love with a game called chess. It literally encompasses all my spare time. My goal is to be better than the rest. My friends do not play with me. Because my friends do not play with me, that's fine. I spend my time studying to improve my game. Have a heart, I have a I have heard it said I've become engrossed. Some would say the game has driven me insane. So involved, I do not even hear their roast. In a tournament, I am slated to play. Ready I am to show off my well-honed skills. Anyone who dares meet me is going to pay. For them, I have a beaten and some headache pills. I'm ready for the chessboard battle, itching to claim the trophy for my mantle. I'm sorry. Pause was too long. Okay, so this is the story of that chess battle. Inaudible chatter quiets to a silence as the opponents from two separate doors enter the room. Like prize fighters preparing to do battle, they approach the table of battleground. The opponents shake hands politely, wishing each other luck. Don't be deceived by this gracious civility. This is a game of war, and it is a customary manner in which this contest begins. Etiquette and sportsmanship are the hallmarks of chess. Gentlemen, generals throw back their robes, which their seconds retrieve. After beaming menacingly glares over the tops of their armies, the battle begins with a slight with with the light side playing the classical pawn to e4. The dark side plays the natural response pawn to e5. In quiet response, the light side plays bishop to c4, and the dark side next plays knight to c6. After studying the board for a moment, the light side quietly moves his queen to h5, wondering if his opponent sees what he's been up to. The opponent, in turn, attacks that queen of the light side with knight to f6. The light side player smiles widely, knowing knight to f6 did not was not enough to stop the attack, and the light side player's queen moves in to f7, capturing the opponent's pawn and declaring scholar's mate. Spectators gasp as the players of the dark side politely lays down his king and raises from his seat. Good game, General of the dark side, says, extending his hand, and General of the light side stands, grasps the opponent's hand, and returns the compliment with thanks and offering him some headache pills. This is called wordsmithing. I thought I had given up the wordsmithing game. Oh, the joys of tossing in my mind witty rhymes and puns, inwardly laughing at those slow to get the theme that I lyrically expose. It had been pointing out to me from time to time that I was being rude, bordering on crass, using smithing to insinuate that some clown had magically developed into an ass. And in actuality, they had been donkeys all along. The fact is, I was not trying to be insulting, merely practicing my skills of linguistic play, joyfully pointing out the obvious in what I thought was an amusing way. I found it to be mentally entertaining to express eloquently what was obviously on the minds of others, too polite to say. This is called Got Joy. Joy is infectious, spread through smiles and hugs. The more you give, the more you receive, and you might even make a friend. Just a few hints, just a few gentle hints to get you started. Look for signs of beauty. They're all around you. Take time to visit a flower or a tree. Don't forget to breathe, laugh, and play. Do a silly dance sometimes during the day. And it's okay to talk to yourself as long as you're kind. Spreading joy is just that easy. And here is something so obvious you might have already guessed it. Joy has infected me.
Oh, yeah.
Moving right along. This is called real magic. When I was little and wide-eyed with wonder, mystery was magic, and magic was everywhere. Most adults knew the secrets of how to pull coins out of my ear, make balls appear from thin air. Such acts of magic performed on me were always viewed with serendipity. It never took much to astonish me, and in turn, I wanted to astonish my friends. I would have traded my toys to know the secrets, plaintively, sorry, that's a new word, plaintively. I learned that the option was not to be, and no matter how hard I worked, keeping a steady eye, focused and non-blinking, I was never to learn how the phrase ta-da and presto managed to create genuine magic, to say nothing of the eloquence of bringing life to life the ventriloquist's dummy. Luckily, I still believe that in every day there still exists a bit of magic yet to be discovered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want that cookie recipe. Just all right. Um, what else? What else? Okay, so these two are not so joyous. All right. This is called I Find It Difficult to Think of Love. I want to sing simple songs of love, but find it difficult to think of love when our lives are being held hostage by influences able to enact change, yet refusing to do so, implying that the price is too high. And those who believe themselves to be less affluent simply shrug their shoulders while mumbling, "What can I do?" Refusing to believe that our lives are inexplicably tied to the many species succumbing to extinction through deforestation and climate change and human encroachment, all deemed necessary for humanity's progress. We seem to be complacent in our own demise, to riding to hell with smiles on our collective faces, acting as if we were not on the extinction list, choked out by carbon monoxide, suffered by smoke and ash, or floating out by the rising seas, or maybe just a simple world pandemic. I heard it said, I heard some selfishly say, "It's okay, I'm leaving the planet anyway." As for me, I just want to sing simple songs of love and the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. But I find it difficult to think of love knowing it isn't enough to save us. I like the mad poems, huh? Okay, okay, here. Diluted whiskey. Unwanted tears dilute the whiskey I drink to take my mind off the reason for the tears. I miss her doesn't convey the depth of the emotional disturbance I experience as streaming thoughts during conscious moments. Nor does it halt the vision, nor does it halt the vision of sleep, excuse me, nor does it halt the invasion of sleep with remnants of reenactments of happier times. And so here I sit, fighting back tears that dilute the whiskey that I drink to take my mind off the reason for these unwanted tears.
Mhm.
And I think my last stuff was home. Did I save them? Oh, yes, yes, yes. Okay. This is called tongue-tied. I want to know more words so that I can be, excuse me, I want to know more words so that I can better express the many mysteries that plague my unknown.
Nice.
And the final poem is called Hear Me. Within elderhood, I found my voice, and surprisingly, I can sing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's empty as trash now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I like the line of joys and hopes, particularly during the season. And we feel all of the joy, actually a lot of the joy as we go into the holiday season. Our next teller, for desserts, cookies are not on his list when it comes to Christmas food, but tiramisu is. I'd like to introduce you to, or not introduce you, he's been here before, favorite, Manuel Camacho.
Oh.
So much. I'm going to put this story in context. And here we go. When the Europeans came here,
They saw the land, nobody was using it, they needed it, so they took it. And that you recycle it whenever you need it. For example, I go to Starbucks or Pete's and I take raw sugar. And my wife says, "Are you stealing the sugar?" And I go, "No, no, 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 no. No, no, I'm just taking the sugar." She goes, "But that's stealing." I go, "No, no, no, no. Wait a minute, wait. Look, uh, I come here, I see the sugar, nobody's using it. I need it, so I take it." And she says, "But that's stealing." No, 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 no. Wait a minute. No, no. Let me tell you something. When the Europeans came here, they saw the land, and she goes, "I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it." Okay, I don't want to hear it. All right, then, all right. All right. So back in the 80s, I used to live in LA, and I had three jobs. One was delivering the paper very early in the morning, between 2 in the morning and 6 in the morning. So I borrowed my friend's car, and I got up at 2 in the morning. I went and got the paper, and then I had my route, and I put the paper in those boxes where you put the quarter in and you open the door. You remember those? You take a paper. Okay. So I was doing that. I have my route, and I made all kinds of moving violations. I got on the sidewalk, and I went in reverse and everything. The cops saw me, but the guy's working. It's okay. But nobody's on the road. That's fine. So I finished at 6 in the morning. And then I went to breakfast. I went to get this beef bowl. I don't know if you remember the beef bowl in LA. It was open 24 hours. So I got this beef bowl, uh, and it was paper thin meat with rice, soy sauce, and crushed pepper. Oh, it was delicious. So I had that at 6 in the morning. And then at 7, I took the bus, and immediately I fell asleep. But I had memorized the route. So that last right turn, I got up, got off the bus, and I went to work at a elementary school from 8 to 12. I got off at 12, and I bought this sandwich, this gigantic sandwich, delicious sandwich. I ate the sandwich while I was waiting for the bus. Then the bus came, I took the bus, and immediately I fell asleep. And since I had memorized the route, that last turn, I woke up, got off the bus, got to my house about 1:30 in the afternoon, took a shower. I couldn't really sleep. I tried to sleep for an hour or two, but I had to get up and go to work. Then I took the bus and fell asleep. And then that last turn, I got up and went to work. I used to work at a restaurant. I was a busboy. So I started about 4 in the afternoon. I ate in the restaurant, and then 10 o'clock, I was off work, and I had to wait for the bus.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got on the bus 11 at night. So I fell asleep. That last turn, I got up, went to my house, tried to sleep a little more. And then 2 in the morning, I had to get up. No? All right. At the time, my friend was living with me. We were roommates, but he didn't have a job. No? And one thing I noticed was that having three jobs, I could barely make ends meet. I was able to pay my rent and eat here and there, but I didn't have any money at the end of the month. Right? And then I told my friend, I said, "Hey, are you looking for a job or something?" He said, "Oh, well, I'm trying, but I don't have any money for the bus." All right, all right. So I gave him some money for the bus, and he never looked for a job. Right? Okay, fine. He was lazy immigrant, and I was a working immigrant. No, all right. And one day I got up and I told my friend, I said, "Hey, do you want to go to breakfast?" And he says, "Yeah, okay, let's go." I knew he didn't have any money. I didn't have any money, so I took him to the supermarket. We got into the supermarket, and I said, "Okay, you get the bread, I'll get some ham." Okay, all right. So I got some bread, put it under my arm, and walked out. I took it. I took it. So I waited for my friend. I'm eating ham, delicious ham. My friend comes out, empty-handed. Where's the bread? He says, "I don't have any money." "You don't have any money? Would you like some ham?" He's looking at me with this starving face. I'm eating the ham. You like some ham? He says, "Yeah." "Well, go get some bread. Here, let's go to the supermarket." So I'm eating the ham. I finished the ham. We got into the supermarket again. I said, "Look, you see all the food? See, nobody's using it. We need it, so we take it. Okay. Now you go get some bread. I'll get some more ham." So I got more ham and walked out. So I'm waiting for my friend. My friend comes out, and I said, "Where's the bread?" He had 2 pieces of bread. "Okay, all right. So here's your ham. I got my ham. We we ate the sandwich." And I said, "Where's the rest of the bread?" And he says, "Well, I thought they were seeing me, so I thought they were looking at me. So I opened the bag and I took 2 pieces of bread and I left the rest of the bread." He said, "We could have had 3 sandwiches, you dumbass." But that one sandwich was the most delicious sandwich. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Noel. We're going to take a 10-minute break at this time. So there's some snacks over there on the table. Please feel welcome to mingle with the person next to you, the left or right, and we'll again convene here in 10 minutes.
And also, I forgot to tell you, we have a storyteller who has told for many years, decided.
Our next teller is going to be John Petrick. And when it comes to food, what do we call it again? Russian tea cakes would be his favorite. And all right. Is it what? Is it bounty? Oh. All right. Is the camera even correct? So while we're waiting for just a few people to go back to their seats. For those of you that are at home watching on Zoom, hello. We appreciate you joining us today.
Go ahead and start.
Okay.
Did you start the recording?
Yeah, recording.
All right, I'm going to turn this over to John. John, thank you.
Thank you, Eric. This story takes place when I'm 12 years old. And it's Christmas afternoon. And you know how Christmas afternoon is. Presents are all open, all the excitement's over. Everybody's just kind of in zombie land. And for us Catholics, it was even worse as a kid because we went to midnight mass the night before, so we hardly had any sleep.
Right.
But we still had one more thing we had to do that day. We were going to go to my grandma and grandpa Petrick's farm, and we were going to have Christmas dinner. And that wasn't too exciting. Grandparents are kind of old. They aren't very cool. They don't know what's going on very much. And my grandparents lived on a farm, and they were very poor. As as a kid, you don't realize this, but they lived on this farmhouse that did not have indoor plumbing. For water, we had to go outside and crank on a cistern. There were no bathrooms. We had to take, when we stayed over, we had chamber pots in our bedrooms.
Yeah.
There was no central heating. There was a stove in the kitchen. The cook stove provided the heat for the kitchen. And then there was a pot-bellied stove in the living room and the dining room. But these were our favorite grandparents. We loved them because Grandpa was joking and teasing us, and Grandma always made this great food for us. So anyway, we're gonna go see them, but we're not that excited, except for maybe the food. They're poor. All we're gonna do is get socks and underwear, maybe at best.
Yeah.
So we head out, and we stop in the next town and pick up my other grandpa. And his wife had died that year, so this was his first Christmas by himself. And so we picked him up to take him to this dinner. This was my mom's dad, Grandpa Mark. And Grandpa Mark was a lot different than Grandpa Petrick. He was this immigrant success story. He had started his business, he had taken a lot of risks, he had expanded, and he ended up being a very well-off man. Again, as a kid, you don't know this, but I got to understand that later, that he had done okay. He wasn't urban rich, but for a small town businessman, he was doing very well. But we didn't really appreciate that grandpa or that grandma who had died during that year, because they were kind of different, They talked with these funny accents. They had some of these old village ways that we didn't understand. And, we were Americans and we wanted to be cool. We wanted to be the cool American kids, like an American Bandstand.
Yeah, right.
So we didn't appreciate these grandparents very much. Well, anyway, we pick up Grandpa Mark, we get out to the farm, and we get there, and there is this huge spread of food. This table is full of food. And the main course is a roast goose, like out of a Dickens story. And I'd never had a goose before, but I thought, wow, that looks pretty cool. And then I tasted it, and I didn't like it. But I was going to have to finish this goose because I could see all these beautiful desserts that were spread out all over the table. But I was going to get some of that. I was going to have to finish this goose. Well, as that was preoccupying me, my grandpa, Mark, was sitting right across the table from me. And Grandpa gets up and goes into the kitchen. You have to go through the kitchen to get out to the bathroom outside. And after a while, somebody notices, Grandpa, where's Grandpa? He's been gone for quite a while. And somebody goes into the kitchen and there's this yell or a scream or something, and Grandpa's help, Grandpa needs help. And so some adult somehow herds all of us kids into the living room. We can't go into the kitchen. We're not allowed in the kitchen. And I don't know what happened there. Apparently they found Grandpa on the floor, and they were able to get him, put the back seat down on our station wagon. Of course, we had a station wagon back in those days, and got Grandpa into the station wagon. And I remember actually looking out the window and seeing the taillights of the station wagon going out. My dad was driving to the hospital at the nearest town, which is about 10 miles away. And we were in the living room, and someone was taking care of us, and we were You know, kids, we didn't know what was going on. We just did what the adults told us. We were playing games and doing that sort of thing. And it couldn't have been very long because even as a kid, it didn't seem like it was very long. That my mom and my dad came back and they said that Grandpa was dead. And that he was dead on arrival at the hospital. So I'm 12 years old and I didn't know what to do when someone dies. But I thought I was supposed to cry. So I forced myself to cry. And we had a little time of grieving. And then there were still these presents under the tree. The presents that my other grandparents had got us kids. And so we handed out the presents and everybody opened those presents. And again, I don't know what it was, nothing I remember. But then I noticed that there was still one present under the tree. And I went over and I picked it up. And it was a present to Grandpa from my mom for her dad. And I gave it to Mom. And Mom said, "You can open it." And I opened the present. And it was a pair of leather slippers, black leather slippers with red lining. And Mom said, "You can try them on." And I was always the biggest kid in my class, so I had adult-sized feet. And I tried these slippers on and they fit me perfectly. And Mom said, "You can keep them." And so that was the present from my Grandpa Mark.
Wow.
Thank you. John Patterson. John enjoys Irish soda bread when it comes to his Christmas day. And just for time's sake, I'm gonna have John just come up and thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. This isn't really in the script, but I think it's important. In my experience, this time of year can be really difficult and stressful for people. And I think also this could be a stressful time for a lot of people in our country and in the world. I'm wishing everybody the best and safest and warmest holiday period, asking everybody to just relax and things are what they are and we try and get through. Thank you for that minute.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Name of my story is Our Meals Define Us. You know, when you think about your friends, eating with them, co-workers, maybe an event has been planned, some compadres, your family, your partner, somebody you just met. If the meal comes together very nicely for everyone, there's a oneness there. It's how we bond. Meals are really important. This isn't a holiday story, but it's about how meals define us. And I'm going to take us back in the time machine. There we go, the late 60s, early 70s, when it was a different time in the sense that everything in the world and in my world and in the country and in the San Francisco Bay Area appeared to be changing. There was a lot of what were called movements. There was civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, the movement against sexual discrimination, against discrimination against gay people, which before I read about that movement, I didn't know about at all. So it was also a period of self-education. And most of the people I knew, they wanted to learn whatever they could about the world. We would be considered progressive and no end to what we wanted to learn. A lot of groups sprung up at that time period. And there were groups among small bunches of people who knew each other. Like they'd be talking and saying, you know, I know they're trying to boycott grapes and the farm workers formed a union, but how do we help them do that in the Mission District? Well, there's a Safeway store, and a group of people would talk about that and how to walk a picket line and on this with signs, you know, on the sidewalk. And things just started by people meeting and talking and sharing information and ideas. And a lot of different kinds of groups formed. We learned about cults. I'd never heard the term before, but there was these communes is what they were called on 60 Minutes. A lot of them were reported on 60 Minutes. There were 10 or 15 miles off any paved road where people went and gave up all their personal possessions. Some of these leaders of these groups were called yogis. Mm-hmm. And they weren't allowed to have contact with any of their family, any of their friends. And there was a whole small business of people who would try and go in and sneak in and pretend to join and figure out a way to sneak out people. Their parents had hired them to try and get them to come out. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. All sorts of things like that. I had always wanted to stay a little bit healthy and in shape. And I thought, I came across a store front and it was a yoga institute. And I thought, you know, I'm open-minded. This might be a good way to develop my body. And I opened the front door and I went in, and a young lady came up and she had the lightest yellow gown on. And she went, and she bent down. She picked up a little booklet about the size of an index card, very thin paper. Read the first 10 pages. When you've accomplished that, you're ready to come back here for step 2. So I put it in my back pocket. I went about my day because I wasn't going to stand on the sidewalk reading a little book. And, well, when I got around to reading it, what you started with was 34 feet length of 1-inch wide gauze with instructions about how to soak it in a saline solution. And that would be the only thing you'd eat for day 1. And that would start your cleansing process. I was too chicken to do that. I didn't do that. Anyway, a bunch of us talked to each other and got to know some people. And one day, this friend of ours came and told us that her parents had a cabin up in Sonoma County. And we could stay there if we wanted to. We just had to clean up, do the laundry, not leave a mess, and bring our own food. So for a lot of us who, you know, really had to hustle to pay the rent and everything, it was an iffy proposition. But basically, we looked on the map, we figured out how much gas it would take, and if we could afford the gas, we could go. And about 12 of us went. My partner and I, we slept in sleeping bags in front of the fireplace. It's very simple to do. All of us read different sources. And so we look forward to getting together because we had all sorts of different insights and information about what was going on in the world and trying to make sense of it. And it was just a very interesting interpersonal experience at a time when, you know, the theme of the day was raise your consciousness. So we felt like we were doing that, being progressive. The next day, my partner and a friend of mine called Mike, named Mike, small town called Occidental, to go shopping for groceries for the weekend. We each came out with a couple shopping bags. At that time, I just thought it was so quaint. It had wooden sidewalks, and the stores had been around since last century, I think. But it was back then. Anyway, on the way out, this gentleman with very long, big, bushy, curly hair and a very long, big, bushy, curly beard, says, "Do you know where the bus stop is?" We are not familiar with the area at all. And I say, "Well, I don't know this area at all. You should talk to someone else." But my first impression is there is no bus stop. And he said, "Well, I live up on a ranch. I got to get up to the ranch with my groceries." And he's cradling this bag in his arms, paper bag. Well, where? So we give him a ride going up the hill, and he starts to talk about his situation. "Well, I live in kind of it's not a real commune, but it's kind of a commune. This guy owns a lot of land. And if he interviews you and he likes you and he thinks you're okay, then you can have a space up there to live on." Most of us up there, but we don't have to stay to ourselves. And our place doesn't have a roof on it. But you know, the Sonoma summers are just so wonderful. We just cover up. We're just having the time of our lives. I don't know how long it'll go on. We've only been here for about 2 months, but it's just great. "I want you to meet my wife," he said. And Mike in the back sitting next to him says, "You're married." "Oh, yes. We're very respectable. Just because we're nudists doesn't mean we're not respectable." Driving up, and he said, we park, and what their house is a box hedge, big square, about 10 feet high, tall hedges, with an extra row across the front that bars the front door, because they don't have a working door. It's just kind of screens it off visually. And we get there and we all open the door, and he says, "Why don't you just wait here a minute? Just wait a minute. Let me check in with my wife because she isn't expecting company." You go, good. Because we've seen him, he's dressed. Anyway, go to the front door. "Where the hell have you been?" "Well, I went shopping." "That was right after breakfast. We're out of granola. I haven't even had lunch. What did you get? Give me that bag." We hear rustling paper. Bag ripped open is what we hear. "Broccoli? Peanuts? That's it? That's for the next couple of days? What have you been doing?" We turn and look at each other and nod. "Yeah, we're going to go." I turn on the car. We drive on. And I have this thought at that time that's always stayed with me. No matter how progressive we get, there's still some things we've got to learn to deal with because our meals define us.
Yes, they do. Our Vicky Karen will be joining us. She is our next poet. She's been telling both stories and poems since I think it was 2019. And she is of kindred heart to Karen. She also enjoys a good Christmas cookie. Vicky, would you come?
Back here. Thank you. Move that way back. I know, me too. For my first poem, it's called Chicken and Dumplings.
All right.
5 generations of Southern ladies surrounded the pot. The eldest was whispering to the group. As they leaned forward to hear every word she said, "I think we can remove the dumplings ever so gently, place them on this tray, cover and put in the oven, while I thicken the gravy."
We need to be quick. Put the dumplings back in the soup, lid on, bring to a boil. Minutes are all we need. Hopefully, it will be perfect. Nobody will know, except us, of course. The 5 giggles went to work. Am I talking loud enough?
No.
Okay. Beyond optimism and hope. Beyond optimism and hope. Treasures lie unburied, to each his own. Every human and exquisite design peculiar to the gift of this lifetime. Look, listen, the waking moments just before or after sleep, fleeting memories of forever, yours to keep.
Oh,
Yeah. Family traditions. I cherish memories as a toddler watching my mom and her family on holidays. I am thankful for the memories. They're colorful, have sounds and smells I will always remember. A child sitting on the floor in the kitchen with women worked to produce a great meal for a large family to enjoy. All the favorites, each season had its own delicacies, fall and winter, turkey, gravy, mashed potatoes, cornbread, dressing, cranberry sauce, candied sweet potatoes, pies, and cakes. Just remembering the sights and smells sends me there all these years later.
Yeah.
Spring and summer, ham for Easter, ribs for 4th of July, plus potato salad, baked beans, cornbread, pies, and cakes. Kids sitting on newspaper to eat. Mama's pies and cakes within our reach. Never would try. She was a boss. The look in her eye told us so. The kitchen was crowded with 4 or 5 women making tried and tested recipes, creating foods to be remembered through the generations. Everyone is joyous eating the foods of our ancestors. No words after the plates were placed in front of this family. The silence spoke volumes. Sitting back in their chairs, sated and smiling, said it all. The women knew this was the time to clean up. Mama and her daughters gathered plates, glasses, utensils of all kinds, moved bowls of unfinished food to the kitchen. The men went to the living room to smoke, tell tales, and laugh and relax.
Yeah.
The women went to the kitchen, turned on some music. I was with the women. I sat as before on the floor. Their backs were to me. I watched them work together. They had dresses that swished as they moved. Laughing to details of their own. 50s music kept the beat as they worked through a mountain of dishes. Their swishy skirts made a rhythm as they washed, passed, rinsed, passed, dried, passed, and the last sister put them away. I was so in tune with my mom, aunts, and their duties, I couldn't wait to have my turn. Now, this is a little food for the soul. Okay. When I love myself, life slows down. I can take it all in. See the synchronicities, hear the sounds of silence, feel every nuance of tenderness. Smell the sweet, spicy scents of friendship. Taste the goodness of being aware, interacting in this space at this time. Mm. A day without you. I ate clam chowder on my own. Salad. It was a big salad, big enough for two. The bread was buttery and crunchy. I bet you would love twin steak sandwiches. They come with a large onion ring on top. It is a restaurant favorite here. The clam chowder was soothing and thick, just what I needed on this cold winter day. I added a shot of Tabasco. It was perfect. As I brave this day without your soft voice and warm smile, I reflect on the loveliness in my heart to think of you. A sparkle that only comes once in a while in this life. Last one. Nothing is perfect. If it is, it's a Disney production. Please remember, I am not perfect. And in imperfection, there is beauty called creativity.
Yes.
I love to think we can create a beautiful life inside a world falling apart. Let's choose creativity. We can both have our lovely world in this time we call now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. All right, our next storyteller is Sir Walter Lawrence. Many of you know him as Sir Lawrence. As for food, he likes to dabble with Scottish golf balls, which when I asked him what that meant, he said, well, that's the name for them in Canada. We know them more as Russian tea cakes. So with this story he's going to share, he just wants to, and I quote, "Once entertained you with a delicious pie story. In some areas of Canada, it's called the Côtes Favor le Pie. And in other areas, it's called MTP. And I know I messed that up, so I apologize. So, and I quote, sit back, kick back, relax, and enjoy the meal." So just give us a moment while we get him set up.
Yes. Ah.
Straight forward. Lift up your chair. Go straight forward. I know. He's got you.
Of course.
Okay, the chair is right here.
Okay.
Okay. And the speaker right in front of you.
Well, I'm gonna hold on to it. There. And you can straight down.
Oops. Hold on to it.
Yep.
Okay.
Watch out, Eric. You're gonna fall down the fence.
Good afternoon. First, I want to thank Eric for being such a great host.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I'm the one who forced him to choose the theme food. Many, many years ago in Canada, in fact, it was the late 1800s, when Canada was establishing their railroad across the whole country from Halifax all the way to the Pacific Ocean. It was hard work and not a lot of pay. It was really tough work. Sometimes they had to build bridges, make tunnels, especially through the Rockies. And they took anyone and everyone that could hold a hammer or swing something because there wasn't a lot of pay. But the worst job of all was being the cook. And there was an unwritten rule that if you complained about the food, you became the cook. Well, there was this young man on his first day in Halifax. He didn't know about this rule. And he staggered to the table with his metal plate and it was a big blob of something that looked gray, and he didn't know what it was. And he took one bite of it and stood up with a jolt and said, "This is the worst food I've ever had. My ex-wife could cook better than that." And he got a tap on the shoulder. And his worst fears, he was the cook. Well, it took months for him to try to figure out what he could do to get someone else to be the cook. He discovered a binder of all kinds of recipes that former cooks have tried to get rid of their apron. And he looked through quite a few of them. There was one particular recipe that was called MTP. And he looked at the ingredients. He said, no, 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 I can't do that. That's too bizarre. But by the time they got to the Rockies, he was desperate. He really wanted to do something. Now, he remembered as a young man, his mother used to make some beautiful pies. It was really golden, and he could remember making the crust and everything. And he said, I'm going to have to make that MTP. And so when no one was around, he got a shovel and a bucket and some clippers and went out into the woods. He knew that there was a lot of wild critters and wild fruits and vegetables and so on that he wasn't familiar with that much, but he was willing to try it. When he came back, he was skipping and singing. He knew that he had the right recipe and this was going to be his day. So he made this beautiful pie in a cast iron skillet. And when the people came in, they weren't used to seeing this gorgeous pie, and they were kind of suspicious. An old man in the back, who had been working on the railroad for a long time, staggered over and cut a piece and brought it back and sat down, and he started eating it and chewing and chewing, and he started turning red, and tears were coming down his cheeks. And the cook thought, aha, I'm going to get rid of this apron. And he started walking over toward the old man. The old man looked up and said, this is the MTP, isn't it? The cook, yes. And the man said, you did a good job. That's the best moose turd pie I've ever had. All right.
You're fine.
Okay.
Here.
All right.
Straight ahead. There's your chair.
Get off the spoon. I hear he brought a pie with him. All right, for our very last storyteller, Walter Wilson. All right. So when I asked him what he liked for Christmas when it came to food, he said that it was his friends and family. That's what it's really what feeds him. So that's both figuratively and was it literal. So anyway. So Walter, I'm going to turn it over to you.
What I meant to say was my friends or family is what feeds me and keeps me happy. That is the food of my life, having friends and family.
Speak up. Get a little closer to the microphone.
It was the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even Manuel's mice. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas would soon be there. You children were all snug in your beds, while visions of Christmas goodies danced in your heads. And Joanna in her kerchief and Eric in his cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, Eric sprang from his bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window he flew like the flash. He tore open the shutters, and Eric threw up the sash. The breast of the moon on a new fallen snow gave a midday luster to the objects below. And what did your wandering eyes see? But a miniature sleigh, 8 tiny reindeer, and a little old elf so lively and quick, you all knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick. More swifter than eagles his coursers they came. He whistled, he shouted, and he called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Donner and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blixen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, dash away all. As dried leaves before the wild hurricane fly, they meet an obstacle and mount to the sky. To the rooftops his corsairs they came, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling you heard on your roof the pawing and prancing of each little hoof. You drew in your hand, were turning around. Down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed in fur from his head to his foot. His clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back. He looked like a peddler just opening his pack. Oh, his eyes twinkled, his dimples full merry. His cheeks were like roses, and his nose like a cherry. The droll of his mouth was drawn off like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as wide as the snow. He was a plump, jolly old elf, with a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed. He was a nice little old elf. Saw him. Oh. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon led you all you had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word and went straight to his work. He filled all the stockings, turned with a jerk, giving us a nod, laying a finger aside of the nose. Up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, and to his team he gave a whistle, and they all flew away like the dawn of a thistle. Oh, my friends, you heard him exclaim as he drove out of sight. Merry Christmas to all, and to all, good night.
Yeah. I have to thank this Walter that you just heard. Walter has had to step down from being a member for family health issues, and he has been a member of our board, so that leaves an opening. So if anybody is interested in being on our board, we only meet 4 times a year.